Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. Today is September 3rd. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to be here and learn a little bit about TradeStation and indicators and strategies around this concept of VWAP, which is a volume-weighted average price. So that's the topic of today's presentation, by the way. For those that are new to the TradeStation Masterclass, my name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. Always a pleasure to be here to talk to you a little bit about our technology and how you can take advantage of it. Before we get started on today's topic, let's go through some of the disclosures. Just keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about is for educational purposes only, that these are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, that active trading is not suitable for everyone, and past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about strategy trading and how we can test a strategy around VWAP, and we're going to look at some of the results of that strategy. So just be aware that those results are no indication of future behavior, and we all need to be aware of that. For additional details on these disclosures, go to www.tradestation.com/important-information. The link is right there on the PowerPoint slide. So you're welcome to read a little bit more about those risks. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So let's do a very short introduction on what VWAP is, if you're not familiar with it. VWAP is just an acronym, and it stands for Volume Weighted Average Price. We are going to take a look at how that is calculated, where you can find the calculation inside of TradeStation, and also variations of that calculation, whether it is to display a historical value of VWAP or to even design a strategy around VWAP concepts. So let's talk about VWAP in a little bit more detail. The volume weighted average price may be used as a benchmark to identify potential market entries and exits. By the way, before I go into the content of today's PowerPoint, let me share with everyone not only the content of the PowerPoint, but also the custom tools that we're going to be looking at today. So let me go ahead and copy this link into the chat so that everyone has access to it. And as soon as you click on it, it should download a file right into your downloads folder. So sometimes you don't see anything happening on the screen, but the download will happen automatically. So you'll have to go to the downloads folder on your computer to find the zip folder that I'm sending you. The zip folder contains custom strategies, custom indicators. It has the PDF of this PowerPoint presentation, and it has a workspace with all the custom studies that I'm sharing with you today. We're going to go through them, explain them, and talk about what are the intricacies of them. But as the first bullet point on this PowerPoint says, yes, the volume weighted average price, known as the VWAP, can be used as a benchmark to identify potential market entries and exits. In fact, a lot of times we use the crossovers on that VWAP as signals to enter and exit the market. Of course, TradeStation has the technology and has the tools for you to test that idea and see if it's something that you would want to trade forward. It is something that we need to test and maybe align with other technical indicators to make sure that we have robust signals. I always say this in my master classes, that you always have to be looking at a collection of studies just to have a more confident approach to the market. But yes, the VWAP is used sometimes as a benchmark to identify those bullish and bearish entries. A lot of times we see the crossover to the upside or over the VWAP as a bullish signal, and the other way, if there's a crossover to the downside on that VWAP, is interpreted sometimes as a bearish signal. Of course, with the additional testing, you may have a more robust understanding of that particular signal. Now, VWAP is also used as a benchmark for that day's trading activity. A lot of times traders use the VWAP calculation as a way to identify if the price that they're getting, it's fair. a fair market price. So if you're on the buying side, you're looking for your buying price to be lower than this benchmark, lower than the VWAP. And if you're selling short, then you're looking for that value, or selling, you're looking for that value to be above that VWAP as well. So that's different ways in which the VWAP is used. So let's go ahead and take a look at a little more details on how this VWAP is calculated. We already said that it can indicate if the market is bullish or bearish, depending on where it's headed. In real time, because there are two calculations of VWAP, and sometimes, it's confusing when you're looking at TradeStation and you're comparing the two, and the two are slightly different. The reason for that, and I'll explain all the details and the reason why there may be discrepancies in the values, but the real-time calculation is the official, VWAP calculation, and it's calculated each day and reset at the beginning of the trading session. And it's using tick data, meaning that it looks at every single trade that happens on the security you're looking for from the very beginning of the trading session until the market closes. And the way that it's calculated is just taking the price at which every single trade happens, multiplying it by the volume or the size of that trade. So you get a trade value. And then once you have a trade value for each one of these trades that happen throughout the day, you're going to add them all together. And that sum is divided by the cumulative volume. Very straightforward calculation, very simple, but it does create a value that can be used as a benchmark for all your trading activities. Let me show you on TradeStation where you can find VWAP as a real-time calculation. Well, let me go ahead and open up a workspace here, brand new workspace. Let me go ahead and open up RadarScreen so you can see how you can add VWAP to RadarScreen. Let me add a symbol list. I'm going to go to data and add the NASDAQ 100. In here, let me remove some columns just to make some space. Highlight all these 4 columns, press delete. I'm going to add a study. So all I need to do is click on the plus or go to studies, add study. Look for the list of studies inside of TradeStation, and you're going to see 2 VWAP indicators. The one we're going to look at first is VWAP. VWAP without any qualifiers after the name of the study means that that's a real-time VWAP calculation for the day. The one that says estimated inside parentheses, it's because we have to do something different to provide you historical VWAP values. We'll get to that in just a moment. But for now, if I add the VWAP here onto my radar screen, let me move it down so that's at the very end and click OK. This column right here is a real-time VWAP for all these symbols. Let me go ahead and resize my radar screen. I'm going to display a chart here on the right-hand side. So let me go to apps, click on chart analysis, bring it over here, and then resize it. I think that by default, the chart right here on the status line will show you the VWAP. I think it's turned on by default. Mine may not have it because I may have changed the status line of my chart, but this is something you can do on your side as well. If I go and go to settings right here on the toolbar and go to window, in the status line tab, the status line, by the way, is the top line on the chart that gives you the symbol or the ticker. It gives you the last traded price, all that information you see on that line at the very top of the chart. But one of the things that you can add here is the VWAP. Notice that it's available for me to add it because it's not in the selected list of items. So I can add the VWAP. I can put it anywhere I want. Let's say that I just want it here next to the last traded price. And then I just click on OK. By the way, if I always want to see the VWAP at the very top of every chart that I look at as part of the status line, just make sure that you set this as a default. And every time that you open up a new chart, it'll have it right there at the top. But if I click OK here, then I see the VWAP calculation right here at the top. Right here, I have ADI, which is the symbol of my chart. Let me go ahead and link my 2 windows together so that I can click on any of these ones, like let's say that I click on electronic arts, I see the VWAP here at 150.73 instead of the radar screen. And if I look at the VWAP right here on my chart, is exactly 150.73. This is the one that happens on the server. There's no easy language involved. We take care of that calculation and provide it to you over here. If I were to open up a matrix, the matrix also shows you the VWAP. Let me go to apps and click on matrix. This is the matrix on electronic arts, the symbol that we were just pointing to. And the VWAP is going to be one of these prices with the V next to it. I don't see it right here on this view. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit to see if it's higher. And it's right here. Everybody sees the small V? The small V next to that price identifies the VWAP, and it's 150.73. Exactly the same value that we saw on the chart. So those are three areas: radar screen, charting, and the matrix, where you can get access to this real-time calculation that provides you VWAP. Let's go ahead and take a little bit closer look at the calculation of this VWAP. In real time, it's calculated by summing the dollar value of each trade. So price times the trade size, and then dividing that sum total by the total volume up to that point in the trading session. Let me give you an example. It's a visual example, and we're going to go to Excel for that. All right, everybody sees my Excel. Let's suppose that these are the prices in sequence that happen for a security. I try to keep it, very simple so that you can see that this particular security started trading at $1. It went to $2, $3, $4, $5, all the way to $10 in sequence of trades. Significant, price change, but this is just an example. If we were to take a straight average of all these, 10 price points, we would get a 5.5. So that's the average price. It's not weighted. It's just straight, simple average between all the prices that were traded. Now, if we take volume into consideration, and what I did here is I provided more volume to the least price. So when the price came in, or when the trade came in at $1, 10,000 shares were traded. When the security traded at $2, then 9,000 shares were traded. So the concept of VWAP is multiplying the price at which the security traded by the volume that was generated at that price. So if we had a $1 and then we had 10,000 shares, that gives us a trade value of $10,000, dollars. The same here for any other price here. For example, if I look at the trade that happened at $4, there was a volume of 7,000 shares. That gives us a trade volume of $28,000. Straight multiplication between price and volume. Then we take all these different trade values and we add them all together. So once we add that all up together, it gives us this value, which is $220,000. And all that is left to do is divide this trade total value by the number of shares or contracts that were traded. If I add all these different prices, I'm sorry, not prices. If I add all these different volume quantities, I get 55,000. So all I had to do is divide the 220,000, which is a trade volume or trade value, by the 55,000, and I get a value of 4. 4 is the volume weighted average price. And you can see the difference between a simple average of 5.5 and a volume weighted average of 4. And it makes a lot of sense, and it's logical because we gave, the lesser price values a higher trading volume. So it pushed that volume weighted average price lower compared to the straight simple average. It's a great way for you to see where the most activity is happening on any security and which prices have the most weight based on trading activity, which is something really important for any trader. When you have a price being traded and it's backed up by significant volume, it just makes that trade more significant, as opposed to trades that, were high in price, but very lightly traded. So it's going to give more weight to those that have more activity. And that's why we have a volume weighted average of 4, because the weight is on the lesser side of the prices. So I wanted to give you this example so that you see the straight calculation that happens from the beginning of the day, where every single trade, it's multiplied by its size and we get the trade value. And it's just adding all those trade values together. And at the very end of the day, or any time throughout the day, if you want real-time calculation, it's going to divide it by the total volume traded up to that point. So pretty cool and pretty straightforward. When it comes to historical VWAP, though, it is done by summing the dollar value of each bar. So we have the average bar price times the bar volume, and then dividing that sum, the sum total, by the total volume up to that point in the chart. A little different here, because once you build a historical chart inside of TradeStation, we don't have access to the tick-by-tick trade information. We may have it if we build a tick chart. That's when TradeStation downloads tick-by-tick data. But if you are applying this indicator on a 1-minute chart, for example, all it sees is the price activity on that bar, and it only sees the open, high, low, and close. It doesn't see what happened in between. So it doesn't have a historical log of every single trade that happened. So it's really tough to create that real-time calculation because the chart doesn't see it. So what is it going to do? Well, that VWAP estimated that we saw in the list of studies that is part of the TradeStation platform is going to take an average price for the bar. How do you calculate the average price for the bar? Very simple. You take the open, the high, the low, and the close, add those 4 prices together, and divide them by 4. That's average price in that bar, and it gets multiplied by the total volume of that bar. That's how you come up with a historical VWAP. And it's why we call it estimated, because it doesn't have that real-time calculation. But it does give you an understanding of that VWAP, or the volume weighted average. It's still volume weighted average price. It's just a little bit different calculation. The more detail you provide on the time frame, the closer it's going to be to the real-time calculation. Because when you start getting into the higher time frames, let's say 10 minutes, 30 minutes, there's a lot of movement of price within that bar, and there's a lot of variations in which prices get traded the most. But if you go to the smaller time frames, like the 1 minute, the 2 minutes, the 3 minutes, then you have a little bit more granularity in the prices and volume, and you get closer to what the real-time VWAP is. We're going to take a look at that here in a moment. Let me go back here to my TradeStation. I was trying to get the VWAP, or the VWAP estimated, to work on my radar screen, and I couldn't make it work earlier today when I tried it, but I'm going to try it again. This is VWAP. As we said earlier, this is the real-time calculation. This is that calculates on the server, and it's a straight number that we provide into TradeStation. You can see that real-time calculation happening in front of your eyes. Now, if I click on the plus here, I see VWAP estimated. Let me go ahead and add it. Let me move it down and put it next to my VWAP, and then click OK. All right, so that, as you can see, is just giving me blank columns. I'm not sure if you guys are getting the same result, but I did notice that I just left it here and I didn't get any values whatsoever. It doesn't matter. The only reason why I wanted to bring it up here is because I wanted to compare. However, I can do the comparison using a chart. Here on the right-hand side, I have electronic charts, and I'm going to add that same study, but on a chart. Studies, add study, and let's do VWAP estimated. right here. Everyone should have that part of the TradeStation platform. This is not custom. This is supplied with the platform. I'm going to click OK. And this is the way that it looks. Now, the VWAP looks a little different than just one line. The reason is because the VWAP estimated, the one that comes out and was designed by TradeStation, also provides you with standard deviation bands. So the VWAP calculation, or the estimated calculation, is the one in the middle. It will be the magenta line. The other two lines, the blue line and the yellow line, are standard deviations away from that VWAP, which is also a very interesting concept because it's similar to what you would do with the Bollinger Bands, where you look at the different extremes. So whenever you have extremes going past these standard deviations, it's likely for those prices to bounce and come back to where the average is, in this case, the VWAP is. So there is a strategy that we wrote around this concept that I make available inside of that zip folder. It just uses those bands as entry points. So let's go ahead and take a look at that strategy first. And again, this is just a way for you to test different scenarios and different ideas and get a sense on how you can use VWAP not only as an indicator, but also as a strategy. All right. Walid, I see your question inside of the chat. Is anchored VWAP available in TradeStation? Not in an indicator form. However, if you mean for anchored, I mean, I'm just trying to understand what you mean by anchored. I would assume that you mean by at a specific time of the day. Like instead of showing me VWAP as of the beginning of the trading session, I want to see VWAP as starting this time of the day. Maybe you want to see what the VWAP value is right after you enter a trade. Let's say you traded something at 10:30 in the morning, and from that point on, you want to calculate VWAP from the moment that you traded. Maybe that's an idea, and that's something that you can do inside of the matrix. But let's go ahead and take a look at how I can do that. Let me go here on the matrix. As we noticed for electronic arts, if I scroll up, I can see the VWAP is right here at 150.65. However, I can say that I want to calculate VWAP from a different time frame. So I right-click on my matrix. I go to data. Notice that we have an option here to reset the VWAP. And my reset VWAP, it's grayed out. I'm not sure. Was this option disabled? That's something that I didn't know. Maybe it was turned off. Let me go to a different security here. Let me go to Microsoft. Okay, let me try that one more time. Right click, data, reset VWAP. No, it doesn't give me the option to reset it. I'm gonna have to look into this for you, or engineering, to find out why these options are grayed out. It may be that the option is not available anymore. I mean, I know that I used to do it many times in older versions of TradeStation, so I have to find out what's going on here. But this would be the way to do it. Other than that, we don't have an indicator that would provide you an anchored calculation. Okay. Let's go ahead and let me share this link again with everyone that's joining. This is a zip folder. It has a PDF, workspace, and custom studies. So make sure that you're able to download it and you can play around with the tools. Yes, correct. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the strategy that's part of that zip folder. I'm going to go to studies and click on add strategy. And the name of the strategy is right here, at MC VWAP. If you've been to TradeStation Masterclass many times, you know that most of the custom indicators and custom strategies that we share have a prefix at MC. They should all appear together, and this is a strategy based on the VWAP bands. Let me click OK. And it creates a strategy around that. Let me go ahead and resize this chart so I can see more of it. Let me change the symbol here to a symbol that I was looking at earlier, which is CTAS, CTAS. and talk a little bit about not only the bands, but also the strategy. Let's talk about the bands first. I'm going to double click on one of the bands because it'll take me to the inputs of the indicator. You can see how the price that is being used in the VWAP calculation is the average price of each bar. Okay, and you can change that if you want. If you want to give the closing price a little bit more weight, or if you want to calculate it based on the range, whatever calculation you want to bring into the VWAP, you can. However, this one, or the default calculation, is the average price. This is doing it for 20 bars. Notice that you have the ability to change the number of standard deviations for the upper band and the lower band. And you also have the ability to disable the upper band and the lower band. If you think that those bands are kind of awkward and you want to test something else, maybe you want to test the crossovers over that volume weighted average price, you can do that. And you can go into the strategy and modify it if you'd like to do that as well. The restart condition refers to how the resetting happens for stocks and futures. For stocks, restart condition 1 just means that it's going to reset at the beginning of the trading session. For futures, it's a little different because you can choose, to use the beginning of the session, not the beginning of the day, but the beginning of the session as a resetting point. But you have all those different conditions, and they're explained instead of the code. So don't think that you have to memorize what the restart condition is. If at any moment you have questions about what restart condition is, just click on Easy Language or Edit Easy Language right here at the bottom. It'll open up the Easy Language code for you. And right here, there's green text is just notations about the study. And you can see the different values here for the calculation that explains, what effect it would have in your study if you change the value for that resetting calculation. All right. Let's go here back to my TradeStation. And if you take a look at what's happening on my strategy, the strategy is taking advantage of these breakouts. You can see that when it breaks on the upper band, which is 2 standard deviations above the VWAP, and it returns inside, there's a break inside the channel, then we would take a short trade. When the opposite happens, when we have an extreme to the downside and we break the bottom band, then we're going to take a long trade when it comes back inside. Let me take a look at the exits, because I see a cover here and I see an end of day exit. So trades are being exited at the end of the day because it just makes sense. If the VWAP, which is the trigger of this particular strategy, resets at the beginning of the day, then we want to start fresh every single day based on those VWAP calculations. You can choose to either exit at the end of the day or not. Those are modifications you can do to the strategy. But I think the exit here, if I'm looking at this correctly, happens when the price activity goes back to the VWAP. Notice that, yes, we were at the standard deviation line. We took a short trade and we exited as soon as the price activity went and touched the VWAP. This one right here exited at the end of the day because that's one of the rules that if you have an open position at the end of the day, it's just going to close it. But take a look at this trade right here. We went to the bottom side, took a long trade, and as soon as it returned back to the VWAP, it sold. How does the performance look for this particular strategy? If you go to data and go to strategy performance report, you can see some values here. Maybe not as much data as I would like. There's only 7 trades. So I probably need a little bit more historical data. Another thing is, we're looking at a 5-minute time frame. And if you look at the VWAP on the status line, we already talked about the VWAP on the status line. It is 805.95. We said that that's the real-time calculation as opposed to this indicator that is just estimated. And look at the estimated value of my VWAP right here is 806.19. It's close, but not as close as I would like it to be. It's still, about maybe 25 cents difference, which is minor if you're looking at a stock that is, trading at $800, And as I said before, the more granular your time frame is, the closer it'll become. So if I can change the time frame here, and I change it to, let's say, 3-minute. Now the VWAP here doesn't change, but take a look at the VWAP right here. It changed. So we're only 18 cents away rather than 25 cents away on a 5-minute. You're going to see that discrepancy as you go to higher time frames because it doesn't have as much data or granularity in the data for you to get that more accurate VWAP calculation. So I wanted to point that out so you can see and understand the discrepancies between the two values. One is using real time, the other is just creating an average of the bar for the VWAP. All right, so we have 3-minute, and I'm going to load 60 days of data. So this is 91 trades total. 50% of the trades are profitable. We have a net profit of about $3,200. Again, this is very specific to Syntest. If I were to change the symbol here to something different, I may get totally different results. So let's say, for example, I change this to Microsoft, and you can see that we're barely breaking even at 1.12 profit factor. So depending on the security, of course, you're going to get different results. But for Syntest, it seems to provide me with a performance that I can continue to evaluate. The reason why we provide these different securities is not as a recommendation, but as ways for you to test different ideas and see if it's something that would work or not. If I look at the performance graphs, the equity curve line doesn't look that fancy. Of course, at the very end, it kind of rallied, and I get very good equity. But since the beginning of the strategy, we had to live through about 70 trades before the strategy picked up. So you can already tell that even though when we look at the summary, hey, it all looks pretty and shiny, we're making money and the results seem promising. When we look at the historical performance and see all the trades that happened before that, then you start second guessing, would I be able to stick through that strategy behavior, that strategy performance? Those are things that as strategy traders we have to think about. Okay. Felix, I see your question about downloading previous masterclasses zip files. Usually when we upload the video to YouTube, if you look at the description inside or under the video, you'll find links to the download files. If you find a masterclass that references a file and you don't see a download inside of the description, let me know and we'll fix that and make those files available to you. But every video should have the download files at the bottom. Okay, so that's the VWAP. If I go here into the code, edit easy language for bands. Let me just see here if I find, yeah, this is using a little bit of objects, but okay. So here it is. If the close crosses under the upper band, then sell short. And if the close crosses over the lower band, then buy. Very straightforward calculation. And then you have, if you are in a long trade and you cross over the VWAP, then you sell. What we talked about, when it reaches those extremes, yes, it puts in a trade. When it comes back to the VWAP, it just closes it. Let's take a look at the other study here, which I found very interesting. I wasn't the one who created it, but it's still a very good and interesting idea. Let me go over to this workspace. This is the workspace that is packaged with your zip folder. Let me remove the VWAP estimated since it's not loading here inside of my radar screen. And this is a radar screen set to 3-minute time frame. It has the NASDAQ 100 securities, or the 100 securities that make up the NASDAQ. And it has this indicator, which is custom, called, well, in your case, I may have saved the workspace with a different study. And that's my mistake. Let me see if I can fix that for you guys. Because when you try to open this when you try to open this workspace and you don't have this study inside of the workspace, it's going to generate an error. I didn't realize that when I saved the workspace. So let me go ahead and remove these studies, and I'll try to do it again. Okay, let me go here and click on the plus, because the indicators, I recreated them so that they would have a prefix of @MC. And this is called intraday volume average RS for radar screen. I'm going to add it. So that's the indicator right there. Uh-oh. No, this is not it. Sorry. Wrong study. I said, I don't recall seeing so many different colors for that study. So let me try that one more time. It's called @MC intraday VWAP levels. This is the one. I'm going to add it and move it all the way down. Okay. And I'll explain why isn't this changing though. Let's go ahead and reload. Control R. There we go. For some reason, it was just generating an error. Okay, so that's loading. And we'll go into the details of what that means, okay? In the chart, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to Studies, Add Study. And the name of the study is going to be, again, @MC. @MC. Let me look for @MC. And it's called Intraday VWAP Levels for Charting. All right. And this is also a 3-minute chart. And I'm going to load 30 days. Okay. I wanted to load historical data because otherwise I don't see prior days levels. When you build a 3-minute chart in TradeStation, it only gives you 2 days of historical data. This study that I'm sharing with everyone here looks at historical VWAP and sets those as levels. It's very interesting because you can use those levels as support and resistance. And you're going to see that in many cases, the price activity does react or bounce off some of these levels, which is very, very interesting. Before I go on to explaining a little bit more, let me just resize this. And now let me save this workspace. File, save workspace. Let me put this again. You know what I'm going to do, because I don't think I can provide you a link to this workspace directly, but I am going to do something very quickly so you get access to this workspace. All right. I have to put the workspace inside of the zip folder. Otherwise, I won't be able to share it, but that's okay. Let me go ahead and do that very quickly here. All right. And there we go. So you have another zip folder that has this revised workspace. And this is in case the previous one generates an error. I know many of you may be new to the masterclass and may not have those older indicators. If you've been with TradeStation a long time, you probably open up the workspace and it works fine because you already have those custom studies in place. So just wanted to make sure that I revised the workspace for everyone. So what is it that we're looking at right here on this workspace that I sent you? We're looking at this custom indicator that is based on VWAP. What is happening? Let's start off with the chart. So let me go ahead and resize the chart. We'll come back to the radar screen in just a moment, but I want to explain what's happening here inside of the chart. The chart is also looking at the estimated VWAP calculation. So this is analog devices. The symbol is ADI. The estimated VWAP calculation are these set of crosses that you see on the chart. Right now, you can see that it says 225.58 is the VWAP, or the estimated VWAP. If we look at it right here on the top of my status line, I don't have it because this is a new chart. But let me double click on the background and add the VWAP because I want to compare the estimated VWAP with the real-time VWAP. So let me add it and then just click OK. So the VWAP right here, you can see it at the top of my chart is 225.54. And you can see the calculated VWAP here is 225.57. So we have a 3-cent difference between the two, which is pretty close. Remember, the more granular or the more detailed your time frame is, the closer your estimated VWAP is going to be to the real thing. But all these green crosses that you have here is the estimated VWAP on every bar, which is interesting. So you can see the relationship between what's happening to the candlesticks today with the current VWAP, and look for those crossovers up and down. The other 4 lines that you see here, these are horizontal lines, are what the VWAP ended at on previous days. And we see that as a very significant level, which is the closing VWAP at each one of these particular days. If you're not really sure which lines is which, because I sometimes forget, they all have a different color. We can look at the status line over here. Notice that green is today, which is what we looked at right now. The white is 1 day ago. The cyan 2 days ago. Magenta 3 days ago. And the dark blue is 4 days ago. So all these lines right here is what the VWAP was at the close of that trading session. In fact, if you look at the VWAP yesterday, actually the market was closed yesterday. This is from Friday. If you look at the VWAP on Friday, it closed at this particular level. But you can see that today, on Tuesday, that same level gets extended all the way through as a horizontal line. And it creates a level that is what the VWAP was on the close of Friday. Very significant. And we can see how the price activity, behaves in relationship to those 4 different levels. We're looking at 4 prior days. A lot of times when we see the price activity, it may react to these levels. For example, on Friday, if you see what happened on Friday, it actually used the VWAP of the prior day, which is the Thursday. You can see the white line right here as a support level. You can see the price activity came down over here, and the price activity actually bounced up from that level, and it did it twice. So it touched that level twice, and it used it as a support level. So many times it's interesting to look at these levels that are created by VWAP calculations, because price tends to react to those levels or those historical levels. For example, look at the price activity on Thursday. On Thursday, it didn't quite reach, the prior day, which is down here, the white one, but it did bounce off the VWAP 2 days ago. So this cyan line was 2 days ago, and you can see the price activity touched it once, bounced, and then touched it a second time. So maybe levels that we would want to watch. Now, we don't have a strategy designed around this idea, but it is an indicator that expands a little bit on the VWAP concept, and that allows you to see the VWAP levels of prior days. In a radar screen kind of setting, we get a little bit of scanning functionality, because now this column right here that is titled last cross is giving you what happened, what is the last activity that happened on the VWAP indicator. For example, for Apple, it says bearish. Why does it say bearish? I'm going to go ahead and click on Apple. It's going to load Apple right here. Let me open this up. And you can see how the last activity, it's bearish. It was because the price activity crossed below a prior level. So whenever it crosses below any of the levels, it's going to label the security bearish. Whenever it crosses above any of the levels, it's going to label that security bullish. That's the difference between bearish and bullish. If you go to ADP, we can see how the price activity went from, the last activity was down here. That was on Friday, where it was below the levels and it crossed above, and that's why it labeled the security bullish. You can see right here that it happened 42 bars ago. So that number is telling you how many bars ago did it happen. And for ADP, it did happen a long time ago, because it happened on Friday when it crossed all those different levels and it labeled the security bullish. For this one right here, ADSK, Autodesk, Notice that it happened just 1 bar ago or 2 bars ago. If we look at the activity of what's going on here, this is a little different because it's not really, because sometimes it's not only, it's not looking at, what the closing price is doing, but it's also looking at what the VWAP is doing. So in this particular case, when we see Autodesk on a bearish kind of mode, and it happened 2 bars ago, it's not looking at the price activity, it's looking at what the VWAP is doing right now. So it's also looking at what the VWAP is doing in relationship to historical VWAP levels. We can see that the VWAP calculation today crossed below the prior day's VWAP, and it happened 2 bars ago. A lot of times you're going to see that happening with these types of signals, because these are the ones that you see under the alert text are the ones that are happening right now. For example, IDXX says bear X today, meaning that the price activity has crossed below the VWAP right now. See on the current bar, we see how it's happening right now. Sometimes you're going to see this right here, like V bull. Whenever you see a V in front of the bull, that's because we're looking at the VWAP line. Let's take a look at this security, which is PayPal. It's bullish, and it's bullish because the V is crossing. Look at the price activity. There's no crosses here, but look at the VWAP line. The VWAP line is crossing above its prior VWAP level, and that's why it's labeled a VWAP. So this indicator is giving you a lot of information. Not only, what was the last thing that happened on the security and what mode is it in, depending on which level it crossed, but also what's happening right now. What are the crosses that we see right now? And are those crosses telling us something? Now we can tell, we can sort and rank this list in any way we would like. If you double click on the alert text, you group all those, real-time alerts happening at the moment. Here is T-Mobile. T-Mobile has a bullish signal. Actually, this is a bearish signal. And it's a bearish signal because the price activity is crossing below. What level is this? This is the 2-day ago level. Interesting. And again, of course, you can see bars ago if you want to see which one is the one that hasn't crossed the most, like the number of days the most it hasn't crossed, which in this case is AMAT, has been, on this downtrend for a considerable amount of time, and you can see that it's still going on that trend and it's moving away from those levels that would create a bullish signal around it. Right now it's in a bearish mode, but these are indicators that you can use to rank symbols and see what's happening to them based on the VWAP calculation. Yes, the session is recorded, Enrique, and it'll take us a couple days for the session to be edited and compliance approved. Once we get it, compliance approved, then we can post it on YouTube. It'll take us a couple of days, to do that. So I would check, back on Wednesday or Thursday for the video to be uploaded to YouTube. Okay. Marie says, can I add stocks on my watch list to the radar screen? Yes, for sure. This is one of the pre-packaged list of symbols that come on TradeStation. If you go to data and add a symbol list, so I added the NASDAQ 100, but you can add any symbols here. Start a list of your own. So for example, if I delete all the symbols, and then I can say, let me take a look at Microsoft. Well, let me take a look at Disney. Well, let me take a look at Home Depot or Johnson & Johnson. Any symbol that I just type in, of course, is going to calculate that indicator for me and give me, what the VWAP mode is for that particular security. Now, if you do get here this number, you probably saw at the very beginning that I got this for the whole list. This is an error because it's not populating a mode for the symbol. And bars ago, 10,001 just seems like it's wrong. So if that happens, what I would do and what I suggest you do on your side is to reload the symbol. And the way to do that on RadarScreen is to click on the symbol and then do Control R on the keyboard. Control R is a reload, and you can see that now I can see data for that symbol. That's just in case it happens to you. You have a way of refreshing the data and getting back to square one, okay? Does it work the same with futures contracts? Could you show it with the mini NASDAQ? For sure. Let's go ahead and take a look at yes. One of the things that you would have to do, though, on a futures, I'm not sure if you're able to tell the session break, but the session break is right here for the S&P E-mini. You can see how it didn't reset the VWAP. The VWAP over here is reset. Let me just see. I think it's going to be done by calendar. See, it's not reset right here. So you're going to have to go into the settings of the indicator and change alert size. This is intraday VWAP levels. When we looked at this indicator, probably does not have that section that we saw for the changing of the calculation. When we looked at this other, let me see if I find it. Yeah, when we looked at this indicator, there's a restart condition piece of code that lets you determine when to reset the calculation of the study. Let me go back here to the easy language of that, because for futures, I would use, two calculations of reset at the start of a new session, any new session, not just regular sessions, and are updated on every bar. So this is what I would have to include in the I don't think we have the calculation variation on the strategy or this other indicator, unfortunately. So you're going to see that if I go back here to the indicator, that the resetting of the resetting of the line does not happen at the beginning of the session. So this 56.31 level that I see here, let me see when that 51 is 56.31. It didn't happen until, well, this is the session, September 1st. So when the session opened on Sunday, that's when it started recalculating, that level. So the level we're looking at today is the level from Sunday evening. So just be aware of those differences, because the indicator, I think, when it was first created, was created for stocks, but just be mindful of that sometimes the resetting, it's going to be a little bit off, right? That's it. So that's my presentation for today on VWAP. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you enjoyed the custom indicators that I shared here today. If you guys have any questions about functionality of those studies, or if you get stuck or something is not working, please make sure to reach out to me. My email, or the email at education, is education@tradestation.com. You're welcome to submit any questions you have on any of our education pieces or things that you're looking for. We'll help you find those. Okay. Thank you for your time. And I hope to see everyone on my presentation tomorrow. Tomorrow, I have a presentation on Option Station Pro where I go a little bit more, I dive a little bit deeper on analysis and graphing on TradeStation. So we're going to take a look at some of the technology around graphing inside of Option Station Pro. So please check the calendar and register for that session if you haven't done so already. It's at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you guys for joining me today. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.